Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the morning show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? What are the launch codes? Does anybody have them? Maybe got a laptop. Can we change them in any way? Are any of you hackers? Can we do something like that? I guess it's not necessary just yet, but you never know. Donald Trump, this morning, the big news. Oh yeah, why the hell don't we use nuclear weapons? We'll have to talk about that one. Apparently, it's reported, and I don't know. I guess it's always questionable what the sources are when you're dealing with this particular chain of custody, so to speak, with the information. Morning Joe Scarborough, who I don't watch, but who everyone else watches and tweets about in the morning, says that the big story this morning is that Trump asked 3 times inside of a 1-hour security briefing with national security advisors, hey, why don't we use any nuclear weapons? Why don't we? Why can't we? And I don't know. I heard it in passing. I mean, I really didn't want to investigate much further other than, that's bad news. I assume he wants to use them in what I guess we would describe as the fight against ISIS. I have no idea what he would want to use them for or where, and I'm sure that was probably part of the question. Well, where would you drop them and why? And what do you think would happen if we did, and what were you hoping would be the effect? But he asked 3 times, which of course is a huge sign of weakness. I can't believe he stopped at 3. Why did he let the generals cow him out of asking? What a wuss. Get a pair, dude. I'm sure that's where Trump fans are on that one. Other news from yesterday evening. After another crazy 24 hours of, oh my God, he's insane. There's no way we can stop him. What can he do to top it next? Still hasn't blown up the moon, as far as I'm aware. Although I'm not, near any tidal bodies that would tip me off to this. But I imagine the effects of blowing up the moon would be pretty universally recognizable even beyond the shoreline. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope it's still up there. Schrodinger's moon. If I don't look, I can't find out the bad news. Please don't tell me. Apparently, rumors are also circulating that Paul Manafort, whatever control he had over Donald Trump, now pretty much evaporated, and that the staff is, to use the term I see being bandied about, and why not? If something's bandied, it's fair game, I think. Staff is suicidal, which I note this morning is now the minimum requirement I have of those staff. Quite frankly, I think the problem needs to be taken care of. We know the root cause of your suicidal tendencies. Why don't we take care of problems at home first before we worry about cleaning up elsewhere around the grounds, let's say. I don't know. I just think, I think I know who's driving you crazy. And he doesn't have to be a candidate for president. He, of course, does not think he's a candidate for president. He is, as I mentioned a couple days ago, filing his FEC reports as President of the United States, which is probably a little less consequential than asking the national security advisors whether you can use nuclear weapons, and if not, why not? But, well, I don't know. That's the chatter today. There's plenty of other stories. We could try and return to ground and simply talk about his tax issues or his grifting or his complete lack of empathy with anybody, anywhere, anytime, for any reason. But nuclear weapons will probably occupy a little bit of our morning. Isn't that nice to wake up to? It's good to know the world is in good hands. All right, well, let's see. Things begin this morning with our morning tweet from Bill. Daily Kos Radio is live now. That's what this whole gobbledygook is all about. Here, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, say every day is like living a stupid history with a stupid sauce on top. I can't believe this stupid history that we're living through. And yeah, your kids, if you're able to procreate post-nuclear apocalypse, your children's children, your neighbor's children, if you don't have any yourself, will ask you, what did you do when you found out that Donald Trump was planning to blow up the moon? Well, what about when he was planning to blow up the world? What'd you do? Well, okay. We're finding out about the growing numbers of Republican defections, I guess. Reince Priebus is up in arms. Of course, Donald Trump, as you know, called all Mexicans rapists, said we should ban Muslims from the United States until we can figure out what's going on. Maybe we should use nuclear weapons. Defaulting on the debt, maybe, okay, too, we'll get a great deal. Yesterday we heard that he has a new plan to address the infrastructure needs of our country, which I assume he'll later blow up with nuclear weapons. But he says that Hillary Clinton doesn't know what she's talking about. She's going to wreck the economy with her $250 billion infrastructure plan. His solution is doubling that, at least $500 billion, if not more, of infrastructure spending, which won't wreck the economy. Why not? Because we'll get a fund. What sort of fund do you mean? A fund. When we need to pay for things, we get a fund. We'll just get a fund. So that's good. I assume you could extrapolate from that maybe, is he thinking about bonds? Because they asked him, who's going to invest? Who's going to put money in this fund? People. He was incredulous at the question being asked. What do you mean, who's going to put? People, investors, who'll put money in the fund. What kind of fund? What will it? How? Why will it be an investment? How will we get that much money? Don't worry about it. A fund. We'll make a great deal. By the end of the day, of course, he had punched a baby in the face. Not quite. He had a fight with a baby. I heard the fight. That's the least of our worries. It was happening right here in my neck of the woods, as a matter of fact, right around the corner, really, from my house. He had a rally in Ashburn, Virginia. That's not around the corner. That's a little... You'd have to get in the car to go to Ashburn. Well, you wouldn't have to. You could bike to Ashburn on the beautiful W&OD trail, which will be destroyed by nuclear weapons later. But then he sat down for an interview on his fabulous 8,000-acre golf course property, which is, in fact, around the corner from me at Trump National Golf Course, otherwise known just like Reagan National Airport never really became Reagan to... early adopters, people who already lived here. It was national and it has stayed national, even though they say it all over the television. Reagan National. Yes. It's National Airport. This is Lowe's Island Golf Course. He bought it, turned it into Trump, National Trump. And he sat down for an interview there, during which time he continued to he made everything worse. But I don't know. Is there anything worth discussing if nuclear weapons are on the table 3 times in an hour with Donald Trump? I don't know. And he might not even have to be president to use them. He might just buy nuclear weapons and throw them at people, for all I know. Suitcase nukes, or briefcase nukes in his case, I guess. Good morning. Greg Dworkin is with us. Hi, Greg. How are the launch codes?
I don't know, but I got an hour to figure it out, and I get to try 3 times.
Yes, Joshua, the computer, will figure it out in 10 minutes if we don't hurry.
Let's play a game.
Yes.
The game will be imagining what would happen if Donald Trump were actually, really, not theoretically, the commander-in-chief and actually had the nuclear codes under his command. Okay, that's frightening.
First of all, he'd nuke, I assume, rival golf courses.
So I missed the introduction to the show, other than the divisive discussion of how to pronounce harassment, which is harassment, actually, and rather divisive. But let me ask you, did you cover that 3 times in an hour thing in terms of where that's coming from?
Not exactly. I noted that it was reported on
I sent you the clip.
Joe.
It's a 2-minute clip if you want to play it. Right. But it's actually Michael Hayden on Morning Joe.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe either of those guys.
Don't. But the fact that it seems truthy is the scary part.
That's true. That's good. It's all we need, really.
Right. So Michael Hayden says, Trump is really erratic. Harold Ford says to him, so let me ask you a question, Harold Ford says.
Harold Ford.
And says, listen, forget about whether they agree with you or disagree with you. Just take the people in your field that you respect. Who among them is actually advising Donald Trump? And Hayden looks at the camera and says, none of them. And then there's a pregnant pause. And then Joe Scarborough so slowly decides to reveal, and you can't tell from the statement, whether or not he's known this for months or only heard about it recently, but it refers to months ago. Mm-hmm. And says, months ago, a noted foreign policy international expert, high-level person told me he had a briefing with Donald Trump, and it was an hour briefing, and 3 times during the hour, Trump asked questions about nuclear weapons, questions along the lines of, well, if we had them, why can't we use them?
Yeah, good question. That's Mika's dad.
And after they said that, again, another moment of silence as people tried to digest that. Mike Barnacle sitting around the table saying, he did what? He said what? And then that's the 2-minute clip. It doesn't have to be true. Scarborough did no sourcing. There's no corroborating, information. You can't take it as news, just gossip. But holy cow, you listen to that and say, what do we know about Trump that says this isn't true?
I guess.
Right?
And,
if you said that Obama.
Right.
If you said that about George W. Bush, you'd
what's
say,
your source?
Did not happen.
Yeah.
If you say that about Trump, you go, well, that could have happened.
Are you sure it was 3?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, that would be the only argument.
Could it have been more?
Could have been more. Anyway, so what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about what parts of the Trump train is a train wreck? What part the wheels are falling? I mean, there's just so much going on
trains. Yeah, I don't know that there's anything else, and that's by design. I mean, I still think he thinks this is working for him.
Right.
So, all right.
All right, so let's just try to take apart this in terms of the moves. I think that the big things that happened yesterday are the desertion of Republican women.
Yes.
Meg Whitman and a former aide to Chris Christie, of all people.
Yes.
As well as a former aide to Jeb Bush, all basically saying, we're not only not going to vote for Trump, we are voting for Clinton.
All right. They know that that's the place to have an impact.
Right.
Okay.
So that's a big deal. This is a piece from Jonathan Bernstein. This is a tweet storm here. I got a couple of those. Jonathan Bernstein on the Trump Show, primaries and general elections. Trump's latest round of crazy, beginning with reviving the Cruz JFK thing, might just be because he's crazy horrible, but...
Ooh, that's a long time ago, it feels like. Okay.
But also strategic incentive explanation. As Greg Sargent said yesterday, Trump's one and only campaign strategy is media dominance.
Yes. Okay.
That's really the topic here. That's why I want to talk about it. Back last fall, I explained the problem with that. Given regular political media norms, it's a red queen race. A reference to Alice Through the Looking Glass. A red queen race in which Trump must constantly be more outrageous in order to maintain the same level of media dominance. In other words, you have to run twice as fast just to stay in the same place.
Okay.
With the problem being that eventually media dominance is counterproductive since you have to be so outrageous to maintain it.
Above the moon.
I, Jonathan Bernstein, concluded this would be a big problem for him in the primaries. I was wrong, because CNN's decision to use missing airplane standards for Trump instead of regular political norms changed everything.
Okay.
By covering the Trump show, instead of nomination politics, and Trump show is in capital letters, instead of nomination politics with the norms that go with it, CNN freed Trump from the Red Queen race. Trump still needed to be outrageous, but not increasingly so because his outside share of the media was built in. Always a question whether Trump show standards would hold during the general election. That would be the constant wall-to-wall covering of his rallies, hopefully because he would say something outrageous, rather than cutting away for 5 minutes the way they did with Clinton. You know, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Or not even showing Bernie. And that's what he means about the Trump show standards. CNN and others were going to face strong pressure to reinstate regular media norms of fairness and equalish time. Failure of GOP convention to draw outsized ratings couldn't have helped, added to the pressure to cancel the Trump show. Without the Trump show, the missing airplane coverage, the Red Queen race is back. And like clockwork, Trump ramps up the crazy. Again, starting with Cruz JFK just as early DNC ratings are in, beating RNC the first day. But as many have said, media dominance achieved through outrage is a lousy general election strategy. You can win primaries with a 30-70 favorable spread in the whole electorate. You can't win a general election that way. Somebody calculated out, I think it was probably Upshot, that basically 9% of the voters decided what was going on here. Right? So it's not like, oh my goodness, the entire country is voting for Trump. How can this be? They're not.
Okay.
very few people actually voted for him. Something like 13 million out of 320 million people in the country. So,
that's true. I guess it's funny. He brags on that number, but I suppose if you transferred it to another context and talked about 13 million, I don't know, gun accidents, they would say, Psh, come on, how many guns there are?
Look how many people didn't shoot themselves.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So there's that.
Back to Bernstein. Even worse. In the primaries, crowding Rubio or Christie out disqualified them, prevented them from crossing recognition threshold. But in general, Hillary Clinton easily passes that threshold. Crowding her out can even mean crowding out bad news.
True.
Which is basically what happened over the weekend.
Yes.
She had an interview with Fox, which wasn't stellar, because she, had to basically, whatever you think of it, defend the emails, which put it in the news. And skip for the moment whether she was truthful, not truthful, didn't, whatever. The fact that she was discussing it, put it in the news. Nobody talked about it because Trump was attacking the cons.
Right. That's true.
Right?
And
so at any rate, if he's back in the red-green race, expect increasingly crazy stuff from him. End. So that's Jonathan Bernstein's look on how media is going to wind up covering this from this point onward, which is, in its own way, kind of fascinating.
Yes.
Now, here, this one is from Michael Shannon, who is a Republican operative strategist, and it talks about the state of the race even before the meltdown in terms of Trump's staff, which we'll get to in a minute. Michael Shannon. Pundits and analysts have learned the wrong lesson from the Trump prediction failure in primaries. In primaries, they said Trump will lose. He didn't, obviously. Now pundits and analysts say Trump can win or has a good chance. Of course, he could win, but his chance of victory is very, very low. How do we know? The polls and the dynamics of race. We talk about this every once in a while. As you know, I'm really fond of polls. Why? Because they give you an idea what's going on. They kind of ground your opinion. And the fact of the matter is, this is me talking, that the polls told us that Trump was going to win, and those of us who shook our head and said, it can't be, is because we didn't believe the polls, but the polls said he would win, and he won. The polls are now telling us, by the way, he's going to lose. Just keep that in mind. So bad predictions in primary were a result of ignoring polls. No one wanted to believe them, says Mike Shannon. Matthew Dowd was a voice in the wilderness. He said Trump could win because the polls said he could win. Discounting polls was defensible early on. Primaries are unpredictable and prone to forecast error when far away. By the way, remember that Utah poll that showed them basically tied?
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. It wasn't a real poll. Nobody could find it. They withdrew the comment. I mean, it's bad enough trying to, interpret polls, but interpreting fake polls, that's even harder.
Wow. Oh, so Trump was right. Yesterday he spent yesterday saying something's phony.
Yeah, that was phony.
Huh. Where did it come from?
Stopped clock twice a day and all that. So anyway,
released it.
By December, saying Trump would collapse had a ceiling was deeply flawed analysis. Now pundits and analysts ignore polls and say, look what happened in the primary. It proves Trump can win. No, no, no. The lesson of the failing to predict Trump win in primaries is do not, capital letters, ignore polling and fundamentals. Even more true in general elections, which are more predictable and easier to forecast accurately. For 6 months, the polls have told us Trump is in a heap of trouble, a durable deficit against the most unpopular Dem nominee ever. In fact, Clinton has led for over a year in the polls. I have the chart up at the top of the pundit roundup, and it's appearing on your Skype screen if you want to take a look. Being behind in polls has also hurt Trump's message. I'm winning, I'm a winner, I can help USA win, and caused him to stumble. Trump used to spend 50% of the message on polls. That's all he used to talk about. Look at this poll, I'm ahead in that poll, I'm superior, you're inferior, I'm ahead, you're behind. Now he has to fill that space. What does he fill it with? Things like the cons, fire marshals, and babies.
Love the fire marshals. Okay.
Speaking of which, we just read that whole discussion about the nuclear weapons.
Yes.
So Darth tweeted in response to that 2-minute video clip, which is going around. Darth tweeted, wait a minute, it was just a crying baby. There's no reason to use nuclear weapons.
I hate babies. Shush.
I know, but, with that guy, again, it's truthy. You don't know. You had to think for a minute.
Yeah, right.
Say, would he? Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
The baby story itself is, okay. All right.
And since he's behind in polls, all these gaffes and insults are interpreted as a losing candidate flailing about. And that is true.
Okay.
When you're ahead and you say something, you excuse it. And when you're behind and you say something, you're flailing.
All right.
Right? When you're ahead and something happens and you're still ahead, it's a flap. When you're behind and something happens,
kerfuffle.
it's a firestorm.
Yes. Okay, I can believe that.
We see that all the time. The firestorm about Clinton's emails. And it was this, the discussion that they wanted to have, but the public already moved on like 2 days later. But this firestorm about the cons, that's a firestorm.
Yeah, that's not going well.
That is not going away either. We'll talk about why, maybe. Trump also now no longer dominates media share and faces hostile media and single well-funded, well-organized opposition. Barring external event that shakes up the race, a Trump loss is almost certain, based on polling fundamentals and election dynamics. Trump will lose probably 4 to 7 points, landslide possible, but unlikely given partisan drivers and HRC unfavorables. On the other hand, if the Trump campaign actually does collapse, then yeah, it is possible.
Yes.
So, what happens? How does Trump take a bad situation and make it worse after that tweet storm? Refuses to endorse Paul Ryan.
Yes.
A leader of the Republican Party other than him. He refuses to endorse John McCain, former presidential candidate from his party.
Which is, in fact, good news for John McCain.
It is, but the fact of the matter is John McCain is kind of stuck because if he denounces Trump, he may lose the primary.
Yes, that's also good news.
But if he endorses Trump, he may lose the general.
And good news.
Right. So it's good news for John McCain.
Yeah. So
after this happens, refuses to do that. Reince Priebus is furious, whatever that means, and calls Ivanka Trump's best friend from 5 years ago and yells, because that's the only way he can get into the campaign and actually talk to people, and there's nobody to talk to anyway. And then, in a genius stroke, Obama gets on TV because he's giving a press conference with the leader of Singapore.
They covered him?
Yeah.
Wow.
And in the press conference, Obama says, oh, and by the way, Donald Trump is completely unqualified to be president. Completely, totally. And if you're a Republican, the only principled, rational thing to do is to denounce him and get rid of this guy.
Okay.
So what happens? So now Ryan, who might have been thinking about it, says, now I can't. Because if I do, then I'm doing what Obama wants, and my base hates that because they hate him. So now I'm stuck. Or as they say in chess, forked, as I was told.
Really?
So this is Judd Legum talking about this. Judd Legum on political maneuvering around Donald Trump's dominance ploy. This election is a hot mess, but today has been a fascinating game of political tactics. Trump's attacks on the cons risk major long-term damage to the GOP brand, forced the establishment to ramp up criticism, and both Ryan and McCain signaled, to various degrees, that they may withdraw their endorsement at some point if this keeps up. That's what they keep saying. I disagree with what he says, but he's the candidate of my party. The alternative is Hillary Clinton. I have to vote for him, yada, yada, yada. And rinse and repeat. They say that every single time. So Trump goes out preemptively because he's hearing this and he's upset and he's losing and he can't stand losing and he's not a well person. So he goes out and he says, Trump announces that Trump, doesn't support Ryan or McCain.
Yeah, he should do that in the third person like that.
Yeah, well, he does.
Tell everybody,
that's how Charles
no.
Pierce at Esquire always refers to him. Trump. Trump said this. Trump said that. When he's not talking about the GM, he's talking about Trump. So, because it is a dominance game. So this is the equivalent to Trump saying, you aren't breaking up with me, I'm breaking up with you.
Right.
And there's a whole Seinfeld episode about that with YouTube clip.
Ooh.
Okay, so if Ryan withdraws his endorsement, it looks petty. Because now it looks like it's because Trump yelled at him. He tolerated the attacks on a Gold Star family, but not himself.
Yes.
Enter Obama, who is playing this perfect. He advised all Republicans to withdraw their endorsement from Trump, effectively making it impossible for them to do so.
Yeah, the
so
flip
you have
side
Trump
of,
and Obama working in concert to lock people like Ryan and McCain into their endorsement of Trump. Ryan and the other top Republicans had a plan to nominally endorse Trump, and then at the end say opposed everything he stood for, and that plan is completely falling apart. Trump's conduct is too outrageous to politely disagree with, and Trump won't play along.
Okay.
What do you think?
Well, I hope that it works that way. I mean, it has been on my mind as I've been watching everybody pressure Republicans to unendorse. I've been thinking, I don't know if I want that. I would like for them to stand by him for a little while longer, at least.
Why?
So that they're damaged goods and people say, when I get to the ballot box, not only am I voting against Trump, I'm voting against everybody who failed to say he was nuts.
But it's better, isn't it, arguably, for them to denounce him and him say, I don't have to leave. I don't need you. You can't kick me out. There's no precedent for that. If you go back to the rules, there aren't any.
Right.
This has never been done before. What's the mechanism by which the RNC can remove me? There might be a mechanism by which you can replace me. If I step down voluntarily, then the RNC delegates can decide to put up somebody else. But what if I decide not to go? What are you going to do about it?
I don't know.
And that is Trump. That is Trump in a nutshell. Why should he back down? He is totally about dominance.
Yes.
So
well,
why not have him fight from now to the election with these guys rather than pretend that they're on the same page?
Yeah. I mean, I guess
and
it's
get the same result. He's not
question.
leaving.
Right. It's just a question of whether you think the timing is better now or later, but I don't think we have any control over it. We might as well start playing the game that's playing out before us now rather than sitting on the sidelines.
Right, but here's the other side of it. Okay, so why wouldn't a principled Republican conservative like Paul Ryan denounce him? Because they need Trump voters.
Yes.
If they don't have Trump voters, they can't win, especially in November. So why is it a bad thing for him to be fighting with Trump until November if he needs Trump voters?
It's not. It's just a question of when I think
that's why I'm happy
start.
with it. That's my thing.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I can't disagree. I just, this is what we're supposed to do, right? Oh, well, there could be some alternative strategy that's even better, and we're not considering
Let's play a game.
Oh, yeah.
The only way to win is not to play.
Basically, right? Well, we have to.
You have to. I mean, you're stuck. What are you going to do? There's no way out of it now for these guys. Yeah. That's why when people are reporting on what's going on within the Trump campaign, they're getting these messages that Manafort is throwing up his hands in exasperation because Trump absolutely won't listen to him anymore. Therefore, he's mailing it in, was the expression by John Harwood, and that the Trump staff is feeling suicidal, said John Harwood. And Katie Torr reported that something big is going to happen in the next 72 hours, maybe in terms of Ryan and McConnell, who is hardly off the hook, but at least he doesn't have to run every 2 years. And that's really the key. Are you up for election or not? That's why McCain is stuck and Lindsey Graham is not. Lindsey Graham can afford to be a never-Trumper. Mm-hmm. It's not that South Carolina doesn't support Trump, the base of the party. It's that he's not up for election, and that frees him. McCain, not so much. But if something big is going to happen in the next 72 hours, meaning they have to decide what are you going to do with him, and if they, as I suspect they will, just grit their teeth and run with him for the rest of the election because they really have no choice, he won't give them a choice, then that's all good for John McCain.
Yeah, well, everything is.
Here's New York Times. Republicans now say Mr. Trump's obstinacy in addressing perhaps the gravest crisis of his campaign may trigger drastic defections within the party, and Republican lawmakers and strategists have begun to entertain abandoning him en masse. In other words, he stays, they go. Just like Meg Whitman, just like the Christie aide, just like the Jeb Bush aide. And then you have more and more prominent people, not just the national security people, but other people saying, I can't vote for him. That's not happening yet. This morning I saw on CNN very briefly as I was trying to move away from MSNBC because you can only take so much of Morning Joe at a time. And I saw Ari Fleischer saying, Trump was awful, Trump is terrible, Trump is this, Trump is that. He was my 16th choice, but Hillary's my 19th choice. I so much like Bernie, so much better, and I can't vote for her, so I'm going to vote for him. Well, that's today. Let's see what happens in 3 days. Fleischer's a weasel for hire, I should say. So I'm not surprised. But there will be principled Republicans who will not vote for this guy and will say so publicly, like Meg Whitman.
Yes. I mean, not what I was hoping for. It's a little bit like Neville Longbottom coming forward. But okay.
Well, Chamberlain would be more like it. I mean, that's like, what the Ari Fleischers of the world would be. Mm. It's funny because Bush camp itself is not keen on Trump, to put it mildly.
No.
Okay, but weasels like Ari Fleischer, I don't know where Karl Rove stands on this, still can't bring themselves to say other than, yeah, I'll vote for him. At least the Bushes are saying they won't.
I guess there's that.
They're not saying they'll vote for Clinton, but they're saying they're not saying they'll vote for him in the end.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I don't know. It's now we really have to wait and see. I did see someone noting that there was maybe it was Greg Sargent, saying that there was a window on this, a dignity window, That was
that's
closing.
the 72 hours that Katie Tur was talking about.
Okay.
They think that there's a dignity window. Everybody else is stepping back and said, you said that about the judge of Mexican heritage who was an American, and you said that about Mexicans, and you said that about the cons, and now you think you have a window because Paul Ryan was insulted? I don't think so.
That is what they live by. I mean, between, all the Republicans. I mean, that was once their 11th commandment.
Right, and so here's a piece in the
irritated.
Wall Street Journal. Trump says he's not worried about Republicans voting for Clinton. Quote, they have to vote for me. They have no choice, end quote.
Okay.
This is all dominance games.
Yeah. I guess that's the only thing. There's no basis in reality there.
Right. While this is going on, Kurt Eichenwald has a big piece in Newsweek on the lousy Donald Trump business ratings and how he screwed up. And you have Warren Buffett on the trail. We talked about this in terms of Mike Bloomberg. I know that there were some progressives quite upset that somebody like Bloomberg would be at the Democratic National Convention.
Yeah.
And what constituency does he bring? It's like how many divisions does the Pope have? Well, the thing is, Bloomberg is recognized as an actual billionaire.
Yes.
Who could buy and sell Donald Trump. And Warren Buffett's probably richer than Bloomberg. And so when you have these guys, especially Buffett in Omaha, for that one, electoral vote, talking about the fact that Trump is a con artist and useless and won't reveal his taxes, and people like us who are incredibly wealthy and very, very complicated in terms of our business dealings have no issue whatsoever with releasing our taxes. It's an attack from Trump in a totally different manner. It's the true rich guys positioning to call out the phony con artist rich guy. And that's why they're involved with the campaign. And just, again, not stuff that we normally read, but this is from Market Watch. The Buffett-Trump story is still holding strong atop our list of most popular stories. That's a completely different segment of the population where you're getting free media that you don't have to pay for in terms of why Trump is bad. And that is why Bloomberg spoke.
Okay. I'll take that. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy swirling around having Bloomberg involved or even hearing bad things from the Bush camp and people saying, I don't really want them as allies. And you
can say that,
okay.
But that's the rationale. You're going for a different. It's interesting because Clinton is going for a crush victory, not just a narrow victory.
Yeah,
they're going all out, and what they did at the convention. I don't remember if we had a chance to talk about it, but I was certainly thinking this as I was watching, especially the fourth night, when you had the generals and the American flags and the USA chants drowning out Bernie's No More War chants and stuff like that.
Right.
What they did is, again, progressives can get a little bit upset about this, but in fact what they did is they positioned themselves smartly to say this is not Clinton versus Trump. This is America versus Trump. Mm-hmm. And America's going to win.
Yes, one hopes.
And so now you're seeing the other, in other words, and Ari Fleischer said it very well. I'm really upset with how this is going because this is not a referendum on Trump. This is Trump versus Clinton, and I'm voting for Trump. In fact, he's wrong. It is a referendum on Trump, and the campaign has managed to make it so. And that's one of the reasons why you could step back and say, you could talk about how dark the RNC was, and you could talk about how patriotic the DNC was. Watching the Trump campaign fall apart this way, you got to admit the DNC was pretty effective.
Yeah, I guess so.
Did what it was supposed to do. It not only shored up support from Democrats for Clinton, it drove a stake through the heart of the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
How do you be more successful than that?
Do it again.
I mean, you remember the Gish Gallop?
Yes.
For your listeners, a Gish Gallop was named after a young earther creationist debater named Gish, who would bring up so many wrong points in a short period of time during a debate, kind of like the guy who does the auction, that you simply didn't have time or energy to address each and every one of his points. And so he skated by because it's like, where do I even start? You just said 19 wrong things in the last 35 seconds.
Right.
See, I win. So that's a Gish Gallop. And that's what Trump is doing. And there's so many things that he did just in the last couple of days, you don't even have a chance to hit them all. I mean, like, his connections with the Russians and what he feels about NATO and whether or not he feels okay with Russia annexing Crimea. There's no time for that. Here's another one he said that almost skated by. Trump says the economy is tanking and he hopes it happens fast, so it doesn't happen on his watch so he doesn't get blamed.
Yes.
But he said if it does happen, don't worry, I'll blame the last people.
Right. Yeah, that was nice of him to say.
I mean, there's not even time to dwell on that. That alone would be disqualifying for anybody else.
Right.
But with the other 50 things that he did, you don't even have time for that.
That's true. The other one that struck me from yesterday that I really have seen mentioned nowhere, I don't know what category you put it in. That's the problem, is that he just, out of nowhere, just kind of said something like, I have a bigger heart than anybody in this room. And it just went on about, I don't know what.
Right, that's called congestive heart failure. I totally accept that.
Yeah, that could be true. That crazy wild-eyed doctor.
It gets bigger and bigger and bigger because it doesn't beat right. All right, public policy polling, again, in the middle of all of this, did a national poll on various and sundry issues that people care about. It's kind of an issues poll.
All right.
And one of the big things from their poll, 44% of voters now support Obamacare, 38% opposed.
Let's get rid of it.
You know why? Because people are too busy fighting about Trump for the constant drumbeat of this is bad, that is bad, this is bad, that is bad, which most of it is taken out of context, exaggerated, or otherwise flat out not true. And when you don't advertise against it all the time and people actually use it, it grows in popularity, which everybody knew would happen. And that's why you can't get rid of it. And in fact, it's happening, by the way. And so if people do agree with Democrats on the issues, then that can only be helpful.
I guess so.
Just saying.
Trump does continue to insist that we got to get rid of it, but I guess they've abandoned the pretense that they'll ever come up with anything else. But he reminds people from time to time, but he's a very ineffective campaigner on something like that because he really, it's less than lip service that he gives it.
Right. Since we're talking about...
says, we'll get rid of it.
We're talking about issues. I just thought I would mention this. Do you support or oppose requiring a criminal background check on every person who wants to buy a firearm? Support 86%, oppose 11%.
Okay, that's working.
Would you support or oppose a bill barring people on the terrorist watch list from purchasing a firearm? Support 82%, oppose 11%. Background checks actually have more support, solid support, lasting support, than even the whole argument about the terrorist watch list.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting one I didn't expect to see. Did you support or oppose a nationwide ban on the sale of assault weapons? Forget about how you define them for the moment.
Really?
Support 56, oppose 33. So for those of you, those of us who are continuing to fight on these issues, the public is with you, just saying.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Keep it up.
Yeah. Let's see. Jill Lawrence has a nice piece. Raw racism revealed in GOP voter law. So she talks about the North Carolina law and how that's going. These are all from the Pundit Roundup. In case Scott Anderson wants to summarize this later, thank you so much. I never thank you enough for doing that. Every day on Daily Kos in the afternoon, the summary of what we said is there. That Scott helps to put together with David. And so that's really nice. But anyway, Republicans have been accelerating the march to demographic suicide since Trump blared his hostility toward Muslims, Hispanics, and immigrants on the first day of this campaign. The Fourth Circuit ruling, with its crystal clear tracing of not just impact but intent, drags African Americans into the circle of fire. So now everybody will hate the Republicans. Very nice.
Yeah. Well, I was very appreciative of the federal judiciary finally pitching in on the effort to...
Right, not to forget that, so there's a whole nice little story about that. So, as much information as we have, and we have a ton, I tried to summarize that as quickly as we could and just get this into the segment. And I'm probably going to cut it there and not speak for an hour and a half like I've been doing the last couple of days.
Okay.
But thank you so much. This has been a really interesting set of unsettled business that we've been going over the last few days. I'm actually kind of happy I was on vacation during the Republican National Convention so I could skip all the bedwetting about the Trump bounce. And when I came back, Hillary had already double bounced him.
Yeah. Well, it was a good time to be away.
Yeah, I would think. So for the Netroots Radio folks who make it happen, thank you so much. I wonder if somebody, David or Justice or somebody, could just send me the true URL where it's on iTunes. Every once in a while, iTunes bounces the feeds and then picks a different URL to attach itself to.
Oh.
and I can't find it on iTunes. I'm listening on Stitcher all the time. That's how I wind up listening to it.
Oh, okay.
Because if you're on iTunes and you try to go to the old URL, it just freezes, which is really a pain in the neck. But I'm sure it's out there somewhere, so I'll try to do it that way. And thanks to the We Act Radio folks, we're still on that. Do you ever hear from them? How are we doing? Does 3 people listen? Do we know?
We don't know.
Oh, okay.
We don't.
Well, thanks anyway, folks. Try to keep it clean just for you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we should probably evaluate whether that's worth it or not. Because some days it would be good for us therapeutically.
I would think. But, it's, because if we're not going to do that, then, we can have Armando on more.
Yeah, that's true. And Joan lets loose every once in a while, too.
But, of course, only by accident. So take care, folks. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it again.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll do that. And Justice is already on the case in terms of trying to figure out what's going on with iTunes. I never know. And iTunes, they changed a lot of things. They used to have the iRadio, and then they got rid of the iRadio. So it used to be that you could listen to the show live over iRadio, and then they, like I said, they killed that project, but they didn't get rid of the live feed for a long time. And I don't know what they're doing, and they change things all the time. They're iTunes. Apple changes the way it does everything all of a sudden, and it happens fairly frequently. And there's no telling. And as it turns out, you gave permission for all of that, in 1999, and they've never had to ask you for permission since. Every once in a while, they ask you to click on something. But I never know what the hell it is, and I'm rarely able to read through their nonsense to figure it out. But maybe Justice has a better idea. Between Justice and Wink and Yuri and all the others at Netroots Radio, directly and peripherally. And I mean, there's no naming them all because everybody who's had a hand in this thing, there's just too many. Not that we couldn't use more. But the institutional knowledge there, inscrutable to me, but it exists there, and I'm sure they'll be able to dig it out and figure out what's up. Okay, so let's see. What have I got here that I can go to immediately? I began summarizing yesterday's events with Trump, mostly because he was in the neighborhood. And between that rally appearance and the interview he did afterwards, I guess he brought some journalists back with him. Philip Rucker went back with him to the Trump National Golf Club. There are 19, 25, 30 of those things all around. This one, of course, as I said, also out here in Loudoun County, used to be the Lowe's Island Club. And, it's a nice place, but of course he's saying it's one of the premier golf facilities in the world, and it's 8,000 acres. It's 800 acres. I think that's just a zero problem, but he tends to do that an awful lot. And, it's the basis of his claiming, I'm a huge employer here in Virginia. It doesn't employ that many people. It is a golf course. They have 2 courses. This is 36 holes. That's large, but that's not really make you a huge employer in the neighborhood either. But and by the way, the course itself creates a lot of problems. He just pulled another one of his stunts when he bought it, which was all the regulatory bodies insisted. He asked for permission to cut down a bunch more trees along the Potomac River. Now, those trees are there for a number of reasons, not the least of which is they stop all the golf balls from flying into the river, but they also hold the, all the property he bought, the land that he bought there along the river will fall into the river and disappear unless you have something there to retain that soil. That's what the trees were doing. But he did not like the view of the river afforded from the clubhouse up on the bluffs because it was blocked partially by these trees. And you could not see the beautiful flowing Potomac River clearly from all places inside the clubhouse. So he cut down all the trees. So now You have instead a clear view of the not very clear Potomac River, a muddy, swampy mess that seeps through the muck created by the runoff and erosion, now without any control whatsoever along the sides of the river, the shoreline of the river, abutting Trump National Golf Course. It's an interesting problem too, because of course, well, for one thing, he's eroding his own land, and he's going to have to spend untold millions in shoring up the bulkheads there to try and stop that, if he in fact tries to stop that. But yeah, it's polluting the river, it's damaging the wildlife there, it's damaging quality of life and water quality downstream, of course. But we'll never see it resolved, probably, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is the regulatory bodies move like glaciers, and Trump's response to all this stuff is, well, what is there, a fine? Tell me how much. I'll cut you a check. It's just treated as a cost of doing business, and then the fine is deducted from his taxes, which he also won't show you anyway, so no big deal for them. But we, in addition to all this, the oddity of the Potomac River is that the whole thing is Maryland territory. Virginia's territory begins at the shoreline, as opposed to, halfway through the river, as you'll sometimes see, as between states. I guess it's Maryland all the way up to the Virginia shoreline, including close-in islands that are separated up by a channel of only a few feet. So it's a weird situation. Anyway, so lots of things went wrong with yesterday's speech, which is to say they were right for him and good news for Donald Trump. He fought with a baby, as you know, because the press really latched onto that thing. That was actually the least offensive thing that I think he did yesterday. You could tell he was kind of joking. Although there was a very good, here's a good observation. If I can find the tweet that shared it, because Pocket never makes it easy, but luckily I don't have to scroll too far back. What ended up happening was Donald Trump, he's given his stupid spiel, and one of the people at the rally has got a baby with them, which will happen. It is Ashburn, Virginia, and everybody has babies. Everybody is a baby in Ashburn. It's an extraordinarily young place. It's a young family's location, and kids are everywhere. So they're going to be at these rallies. And boy, were there kids at these rallies. I said the baby thing was the least offensive. Probably the most offensive wasn't even him, but the 10-year-old kid who kept standing up on a chair every time he mentioned Hillary Clinton, who would scream, "Bring that bitch down." This is like a 10-year-old kid, noticed by all the journalists there, who I guess took a moment afterwards to talk to they didn't identify them as parents. They just identified them as adults accompanying this child. I don't really know what that's supposed to mean. And basically asked, what's the deal with this kid? Where did he get this mouth? And their stupid answer, of course, was, it's not our fault. This kid learned it from the Democrat schools he goes to. I'm sure, because it's cursing 101 is mandatory for all the fifth graders. They love to teach them to stand up and scream, "Tear the bitch down." So I don't know. Ricky Bobby's kids were in the audience, and we just had to. By the way, it turns out the adults in that situation, not a resident of Ashburn, Virginia. So we don't even have to blame that on Ashburn. They're from Mount Vernon, Virginia, as it turns out. Anyway, the baby thing. Somebody's got a crying baby. And he starts out well enough, and he says, don't worry about the baby. 'Cause I guess the person maybe started to stand up and perhaps was actually looking to get out with the baby or with their lives before anything bad happened. And Trump made some offhand, joking comments. But don't worry about it. It's okay. We love babies. I love babies. Babies, they cry. It's okay. It just means they're healthy. We love healthy babies. That's what we want. Just some sort of magnanimous type gesture. Anyway, so the woman stayed, and then at that point, he goes on with his speech, and then a few minutes later, which was actually kind of funny, he also, in a rather joking voice, says, "You know something? I was just kidding. Get that baby out of here after all." Which was, kind of funny. And I'm sure for his fans, they found it endearing that he would, it's another one of those things that everybody's thinking, but nobody says out loud, and he does, and he's just so brave. So it was kind of a joke, but then he goes on and he did say something very odd about that. And he said, I was just kidding. You should get that baby out of here. And he says, people don't understand. You say something like that, but, oh, we all love babies and it's okay. And then she actually thinks I'm serious, that she should stay here with the baby. The baby's screaming, get out of here. And it was I don't know. So the fans, I'm sure, thought it was a really fun thing. But I did see this tweeted by Rebecca Munson, who tweets under, I guess, the name of SH, like as in she, SH Experienced, SHXPERIENCD, Experienced. So anyway, she wrote this thing here, which is quoted beneath. This captures something about the Trump baby story that was making me uneasy, but that I couldn't put my finger on. And I think I feel the same way. And it is a screen cap of a Facebook entry from someone named Amadi Lovelace. And it reads thus. In talking about Trump and the baby, people seem to be focusing on the idea of who yells at a baby. And it is kind of in line with our questions about his temperament to frame this as Trump yelling at a baby. But he didn't yell at a baby. He yelled at a woman who had a baby. That's true. And more importantly, he didn't just yell at her. He gaslighted her. Now, about what it's a very popular term these days in describing a particular type of misogyny, a psychological trick that men use in trying to convince women that basically whatever they're thinking is inherently crazy. That there's something wrong with them. If there's a disagreement about anything, as between a man and a woman, it's not that it's a genuine disagreement, but that, well, women, they have mental problems, they're crazy. It's, it's a terrible psychological attack. And used, generally speaking, men against women. Sometimes I think maybe we're getting a little bit overbroad with it, but there's very definitely some element of it in this. I don't know whether you would say it's a crystalline example of it. Maybe I misunderstand it, and it is one, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a caution. Generally speaking, I get what she's after here, and I don't falter for using the term. So, more importantly, he didn't just yell at her, he gaslighted her, telling her at first that it was okay that her baby was fussing, and then acting like she was nuts for taking him at his word, and should have somehow divined magically that he actually wanted her to leave. This was an example of three horrible things wrapped up in one. First, Trump's tendency toward doublespeak, saying one thing, meaning the exact opposite, and then acting like everyone else is bizarre and ignorant for taking his words at face value. That's a pretty good point. Second, the aforementioned gaslighting, which is always an abuse tactic, full out. And third, and this is a little more nuanced, it's a prime example of the insidious way in which parenting forces women, especially women in particular, really, out of public life. When babies aren't welcome somewhere, when babies start crying, it is mothers who are expected to stay home, mothers who are expected to take the baby out, mothers whose lives are interrupted. It's not Trump yells at a baby, it's Trump uses abusive tactics and reinforces marginalization of women with other children, or women with children, by yelling at a mother of a young baby. Sometimes brevity is the enemy of an accurate picture of just how bad something is. That's true. Very often, brevity is the enemy of that, and that I did not expect that to turn up in the narratives of what happened with the baby, especially given how easy and funny it is to say Trump yelled at a baby, which he didn't, which is one thing, and even the part during which it was assumed he was yelling at a baby. It's a mistake to say that he was genuinely perturbed by this baby. Although it wouldn't be necessarily mistaken to note, his rally was so huge and uncontrolled. And remember, he started this one again. He didn't actually single out the fire marshal this time. The fire marshal actually, by the way, on the record as having policed ingress and egress from emergency exits at a Hillary Clinton rally in Loudoun County already. So you can't quite accuse her so easily of bias. Not that that would have stopped him any. But he didn't get around to actually naming the fire chief yesterday. But he did pull the same routine. He started off his rally saying, there was thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people outside. They can't get in. There's too much demand for our rallies, which of course would mean that you've been planning them terribly all along. But instead he did it in a local high school, and I don't really know how many people that high school can hold. But I assume it's in the 1,000 to 2,000 range. But he was claiming, of course, tens of thousands of people being outside, and he ought to have his outdoor rallies. But he didn't, because he only has the 800 acres a few miles away. But he wasn't about to interrupt paying customers at his golf course to accommodate a bunch of people with kids who would stand up and yell, "Take the bitch down." He doesn't really like you people. Anyway, so he didn't go at the fire marshals there, but he did start out by saying what a huge number of people there were trying to get in, which would, of course, imply that there was a massive number inside, which would, of course, make it really difficult to believe that a crying baby could distract him. It doesn't sound like a large and raucous crowd, but, of course, you never see the crowd in the video feed. Anyway, the whole thing was pretty stupid, top to bottom, but I thought this was a very good point. That, that he gets away, that his fans really love the idea, and maybe it's because he's doing it to a woman even, love the idea of him pretending, they're willing to play along and accept as realistic the play that I said you should stay, so you stayed, and what's wrong with you taking me at my word? What are you, stupid? Oh, everybody should be able to read me. I'm like an open book, an open, very, very stupid open book. So, I don't know. I'm not really sure why that one came out the way it did. But, look, that's life. Okay, Bill had an observation here, too. Have I missed it? Yeah, I was, he says, rather amazed last night when an NBC Nightly News reporter quoted that kid's full curse without editing or bleeping it. I guess it's okay to get out there and say, take the bitch down. And really, the first reporters that I saw on the scene discussing it said they estimated him to be about 10 years old. And I think they even named, somebody got the name of, again, the adults accompanying him. Pam Kohler, I believe was the name, and from Mount Vernon, Virginia. Well, okay. Look her up. Maybe she's got a Facebook page, and you can tell her how she's doing. Anyway, let's see. There's any number of other crazy things that we could go to, but I guess I'll recommend there's a transcript of the full exchange between Philip Rooker and the Donald that takes place at the golf course, and every minute a new surprise. I mean, there's some really amazing exchanges in there, but too long to read through in its entirety. One other thing, though, that I wanted to put on the record, I don't know if I actually got to mention it yesterday. I think so. But apparently, I guess Fox has finally got around. I'm curious about how they corrected the record on their complaints. The Fox and Friends people were raging the other day about, I guess in response to the what they see as the liberal media blowing up the flap, the kerfuffle with Kaiser Khan, i.e. Pissing on his son's grave, basically. They said, well, the liberal media is just as bad. None of them covered. They all cut away. They all covered the Khan speech. But, they cut away from Pat Smith's speech about her loss of her son in Benghazi, and how dare they do that, and what hypocrisy, et cetera, et cetera. As it turns out, all the networks covered that speech, save one, which actually cut away during that speech, and that was Fox. But they didn't know that. But I guess they've corrected the record because they're serious journalists. At least that's what The Hill says in the headline. Fox corrects after flub on who carried convention speech live. It was Fox News anchor Brian Kilmeade on Tuesday issuing the correction, one day after claiming that no networks, none, zero, carried a key Republican National Convention speech live. Pat Smith, the mother of an American killed in the 2012 terror attack in Benghazi, spoke on the first night of the GOP convention, blaming Hillary Clinton, of course, for her son's death, calling her a liar, etc., etc. They helpfully note that Clinton is now the Democratic presidential nominee, in case you missed that item. Anyway, on Fox and Friends on Monday, they compared media coverage of Smith's speech to that of Kaiser Khan's remarks at the DNC. Khan, who lost his military son in the Iraq War in 2004, harshly criticized Trump for his immigration stance. I was on the floor with that, Kilmeade said of Smith's speech. I did not know that no networks covered her. Nobody covered those remarks live, but almost everybody covered Mr. Khan's remarks live. Khan's remarks were not shown live on Fox News. They actually cut away from that one, by the way, but they were carried by CNN, MSNBC, Univision, and C-SPAN. Both Khan and Smith spoke before the broadcast networks ABC, CBS, and NBC had kicked off their TV coverage. Kilmeade corrected the record live on the air Tuesday as it pertained to the Smith speech not being shown on Fox News while airing on competing networks. Yesterday, we talked about the two speeches, the Khan speech and the Pat Smith speech, and I said everyone carried the Khan speech live, but no one carried the Pat Smith speech live. There were some networks that carried the Pat Smith speech live. We didn't carry it either. And, of course, he neglects to point out they cut away from the Khan speech. So, not really much of a correction because they still got it wrong. But worth noting that they, I guess, are aware sometimes that they have things wrong. Man, I guess, you know what, maybe we can save, if we can get Joan in today, perhaps she might like to, I don't know, I'm not sure whether she'd like to avoid Trump entirely, but that might be a good place to discuss the dynamics of his continuing refusal to endorse congressional Republican leaders, and we can catch up on also some of the results of yesterday's primary voting in the congressional races. There's been some interesting developments there. Let's pocket those. You likely know what they are already, but we'll pocket those for discussion a little bit later on. Newsweek, as Greg mentioned, now making itself relevant again, I suppose, in the form of Kurt Eichenwald's latest about Donald Trump's many business failures explained. This is an ongoing topic and something we keep returning to because, of course, more and more people are discovering just how ridiculously fraudulent his record of so-called success as a businessman really is. But I just want to, I guess we'll at least note that he's adding this one to the pile. And the pile is growing and growing. There's really, I mean, we've discussed it at some length already, but we'll just, I'll tell you what we'll do is we can skim over the materials that Eichenwald digs up at some point, probably off the air, offline, as it were, today, and see if there's anything new to add to the pile, anything that really stands out. But the work that they're doing in compiling the number of people, small businesses in particular, that he just plain old did not pay, that he just left out of the plan here. Oh, I guess we had some auto-playing video going on here. That, by the way, just so that everybody knows, I think I've got it muted here, but if not, I'll just kill that window entirely. That thanks to good old Newsweek, because they're such a solid business, they don't need to sell auto-playing ads to anybody because they're a titan of the print media world and don't need to pick up nickels and dimes that way. I like to let you know who's screwing with the show every once in a while. Okay. So we'll take a look at that one, or add to the list and see if there's any perhaps new small business contractors that we didn't know about yet. But we may want to save that one for later. But just running down our list of items to discuss here today. Also, another note on the voting restrictions cases from yesterday. I think we've got that covered pretty thoroughly, but I did want to point out, I guess, just along the lines of this morning's discussion, that we have to discuss the possibility of Donald Trump using nuclear weapons on people. Just to remind you, the situation I described inside the Department of Justice and about voting rights and voting access generally, again, the Republican position against which there is this large-scale backlash in the courts and elsewhere, is something that will reemerge and manifest itself again in any future Republican administration, Donald Trump or otherwise. That is Republican policy. That's how they think the government ought to be run. And it doesn't take an extraordinarily disdainful or unhinged Republican president to do it. That is what you will get at a minimum from what you would otherwise regard as a normal or mainstream Republican administration. I can only assume that it would be accelerated under a Trump administration, given how disinterested he is, or in fact how hostile he is to actual rules and their application to him or anyone who's working for him. So I guess we should make special note of the fact that that is baseline for mainstream Republicans, period, and you can only expect worse from Trump. I guess the only possibility that Trump wouldn't be worse is if he just is merely concentrating on sacking and looting the country and can't be bothered to pay attention to these things. And I guess at that point, people would just simply be freelancing it and hoping that they, rather than executing a unified policy from the federal level, it would just be, well, we'll leave bigotry to the states. And then people can work things out for themselves. Anyway, I thought that was a remarkable set of stories that, would tell you an awful lot about what you should expect from Republican administrations, period, and why it would be necessary, for instance, to root out those people left behind, including the justices of the Supreme Court, left behind by Republican administrations. This is a long-term project of theirs, and it doesn't depend on any particular level of crazy. They really, truly, simply believe this is the correct interpretation of things. It's very interesting. Just again, generalized difference between conservatives / Republicans and liberals / Democrats in terms of, who ought to have a voice in government. They just simply basically have a fundamentally different idea about who ought to have voice in government. They come up with and find different ways of attempting to legalize disenfranchising people and like to sometimes care about being able to point to it being taken care of legally. It's all legal. Other times they don't care quite as much. But, of course, what is and isn't legal is a choice that we make in governance, for the most part, within bounds. I mean, I guess when they began to lose the legal part of it and they simply said, well, we'll just run roughshod over it by simply doing it anyway and passing laws that end up being found wholly unconstitutional. And then they believe, well, the rest of us think they lost, but they regroup and simply say, well, if we can win these elections and replace justices of the Supreme Court with other people who will say that's not unconstitutional, well, then we would win. And, of course, They're actually, practically speaking, quite right about that. Another good reason not to let any of them occupy office at all, if at all possible. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of wrap up that note and remind you of just what we're up against. Even if they were to force Donald Trump somehow from the ticket and replace him with a regular Republican, that would be on their agenda just the same. That won't change whether they get rid of Donald Trump or Donald Trump, gets rid of himself, or the whole staff commits suicide and takes him with him. I don't know what the plan is over there, but that won't change no matter who they get to replace him. Okay.
And in fact,
yes,
replacing Donald Trump is part of their agenda for achieving all of that, because Donald Trump losing hugely and dragging down members of Congress with him prevents them from doing all that.
That's a good point. Made by Joan McCarter, senior political writer at Daily Kos, who is here and was waiting patiently for the wrap-up of my rant. Hi, Joan. How are you doing?
I am fine. How are you this morning, David?
Donald Trump says he's going to use nuclear weapons, but I'm okay.
Yeah, that's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Do you suppose he's getting actual real briefings, or are they making stuff up for him?
I don't know. Mitch McConnell, Mitch McConnell. Harry Reid says they ought to make up stuff. Mitch McConnell may also say they ought to make up stuff. I don't know whether he said that out loud, but I wouldn't doubt that he also says, yeah, just give them fake stuff. I don't know. And this may be one of those, I can't tell what kind of briefing this was. And if Scarborough, who knows if Joe Scarborough is telling the truth.
Because of Scarborough, is he?
Yeah, that's a problem. But then he
says...
He
heard from somebody.
Right. And he says it happened months ago. Yeah. But if it did happen months ago, then I guess this is one of those, I want some advisors. I'm hiring people to come in, or asking for them to come in and talk to me. So it's not a top secret security briefing that he would have gotten because he had secured the nomination. Those are only just beginning. Now, if he asks those guys, I don't know. I don't know if that leaks. That'll be a tougher, that'd be a more serious leak, because those guys would be there in their governmental capacity. But we don't know whether there really was a leak or whether Joe Scarborough just made it up. But I guess if he did, good for him. That's good for your ratings.
Oh, that's a good one, yeah.
I'm okay with that. And I believe it. And because it's believable.
It's totally believable.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't true, it would be like those stupid, April Fool's jokes where people get on and they say things that are totally believable and then say, haha, I was just kidding. And like you're missing the point of the joke. You're supposed to make us look foolish for believing something that wasn't believable. You can't just say that, an unknown congressman has announced his retirement. Okay, just kidding. He didn't.
Yeah.
That's not an April Fool's joke.
Who cares?
Right. But yeah, that reminds me, we have some stories on that. So, an otherwise unknown congressman who is announcing his retirement because he lost.
Yes.
That was good news.
There's one Freedom Caucus-y kind of guy gone.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Tim Holzcamp, Kansas.
Yes. And he was a fairly prominent Freedom Caucus guy.
Yeah, he's been a big thorn in the side of leadership for a long time. In fact, did you see the picture of John Boehner toasting with a glass of wine last night?
Yes.
The election results?
That could have been happening for no reason whatsoever, but...
Well, yeah. Boehner drinking wine? Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, toasting the feat of Tim Hulskamp, which is, that's pretty funny that he lost because, he was poised to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of having forced Boehner out. And what has he done since? Nothing. And I guess he was looking forward to perhaps his next term consolidating some kind of power, but instead he's going to be consolidating, I guess, his resume, looking for work.
Defeated in the primary by a person who I don't know, but who apparently had the backing of Big Ag, which is sort of an issue for Kansas.
Yes.
Agriculture.
Right.
Apparently they felt that they needed somebody who actually paid attention to what was happening in Kansas.
Huh.
Rather than, I don't know, shutting down government, refusing to lift the debt ceiling cap.
Yeah. Well, that's tough news for, well, I guess the ultra-conservatives who run Kansas. I suppose that's supposed to be a message to them, although Kansans, you could just get rid of those guys as well.
Yeah.
But this is a good start.
It is.
And, I was glad to see it.
Hopefully. I mean, apparently, this guy replacing Holzkamp is going to care about something happening in Kansas.
That's good news. That would be a great plan for Kansas to have someone who, I'm not sure what it is, but eventually he will care about something that happens in Kansas.
However, this was a Kansas Republican primary.
Yes.
So, this guy might be great on ag and absolutely crazy on everything else. Worse than Holzkamp.
That's true. I mean,
I haven't really looked into it a lot. So, because it is Kansas Republicans voting.
We kind of have to see what they hand us there. And it might just be, I'll be every bit as crazy as that guy, except
but I'll bring home some pork.
Yeah. Maybe I wouldn't vote for a government shutdown if we hadn't already done the agriculture funding bill, because you guys want to get your checks, and when we shut down, they don't send those. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen again, but we'll shut down everything else.
It's
Could be.
Entirely possible.
Well, that's how you would win a Republican primary in Kansas, I guess. So I guess that'll be an assignment for somebody. Figure out who, well, I guess if he looks like he's going to win, then we'll try and figure out what is this guy all about.
Hopefully Democrats have somebody running in that seat.
You know what? There's plenty where there aren't. So offhand, I couldn't tell you. Maybe I'll Google it up just to find out. But
we need our elections team on the phone.
Yeah,
they could tell us.
It would be a fun story. There's every possibility this guy is a reindeer farmer or something fun like that. We've had that happen before. I don't know if there's much reindeer farming going on in Kansas, but
I don't think that's really reindeer
entrepreneurial
territory.
Spirit exists everywhere. Lots of news also about Donald Trump's refusal to a fun play, if you like chaos, playing both McCain and Paul Ryan yesterday, and I guess peripherally,
and Kelly Ayotte.
Yes, Kelly Ayotte, who I wonder if she thinks, well, on the any publicity is good publicity front, I am in the news with two very prominent Republican names right now, and almost everything is good news for one of them. Right? If it's good news for John McCain, and I'm in an article with John McCain for the same thing, then by extension, it's good news for me. Maybe.
She still has a primary coming up.
She does.
So
I assume somebody who cares about something that would happen at a future date in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
So Trump also, I guess he spent a few minutes bashing everybody, but I think the shot he took at Kelly Ayotte was that he's beating her in the polls, which was an extraordinary thing to say for people running for two completely separate offices. And of course
he beats everybody in the polls.
Yeah. I mean, you wonder how much of this whole process he understands. It's his impression. He says he can speak to this now because he won New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. That's his thinking. But he's thinking of it, I think, even in general election terms, like New Hampshire's mine now. I own it, for one thing. But he won a crowded primary there.
The Republican Party is his now.
Yes, that's true. He's won that prize. But he claims to be beating her in the polls, which I gathered he thought meant, well, I'm polling higher against Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire than she is against her primary opponent in New Hampshire. And as it turns out, that's not actually true either.
Yeah.
But I don't really know who knows what he thought about that.
It's Trumpiness.
Yeah, right. I mean, given the way he gets out of everything, Putin won't go into Crimea, but he's already there. Well, yeah, I know that, but I mean he won't go in again if I'm president. So, that was his actual answer, so I suppose he's free on everything.
Oh my goodness.
Well, they won't do it again.
We told you this was going to happen, Republicans.
Yeah.
We gave you fair warning.
Right.
Every indicator said, this is the path you were going down. Now you done it.
Yeah.
And now you regret it.
And so it makes me think of for how many years have we seen, increasingly either aloof or just stupid nominees, really, from the Republican side. The excuse for whom has always been, presidents, they just surround themselves with advisors. It'll take care of itself. And so if you ever wondered, is there a level of stupid at which it no longer matters who you surround yourself with? The answer is now obvious and yes. I remember just the 2008 and 2012 campaigns where, by comparison, of course, neither McCain nor Mitt Romney are anywhere near as stupid and reckless as Donald Trump. But it was easy to believe that they could get competent advisors and do reasonably well. But yeah, I guess when you get to the level of it really will matter that this guy doesn't know that Crimea has already occupied because no one can advise him differently, and he's willing to stand there and say that he meant it wouldn't happen a second time if he were president. Right. And
because he's going to put Pence in charge of all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yes, both foreign and domestic policy.
Yeah.
That's true. Of course, the team spent yesterday also, I understand, blaming Obama for Captain Khan's death in Iraq because he changed the rules of engagement 5 years after he died.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's pretty good. But I know that. I meant he won't die again if I'm president.
He wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
Had I been president instead of Barack Obama?
Yeah.
5 years after he died?
Yeah. When
no,
Obama
that one
didn't
doesn't
do
work either.
Right. No. So I'm guessing he just meant, he won't be killed again. Like Crimea. Don't worry about it.
And this is not even Trump. It's one of his advisors, one of his spokespeople. Oh my goodness.
Katrina Pearson, I think, floated that one on TV yesterday, but I don't think she was the first. Yeah. So it was a big day for the big names, the people that don't worry about it. He'll get good advisors to surround him with. Katrina Pearson blew that one, and Corey Lewandowski reviving the birther attacks yesterday on CNN because he was such a great acquisition and is being such a good neutral journalist. And thanks a lot, CNN, for bringing that one back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, by the way?
Yes?
AOT's spokesperson confirmed yesterday to The Hill that she is not withdrawing her support for Donald Trump.
That's because he's such a great guy and she is such a strong conservative.
Nor is John McCain.
Well, why would he? He prefers, I don't know. They're really amazing. I mean, I understand under normal circumstances, it's a very, very difficult thing to do because party affiliation is a fairly serious bond.
In an election year.
Yeah. But wow, I mean, it's funny because this is supposed to be one of those things that political self-interest takes care of. You know, I mean, your first priority is you.
Yeah.
And you do what's best for you, and it's becoming increasingly obvious that everybody is encouraging them to cut loose and take care of themselves first, and they're refusing to do it. And I'm not really sure what to make of it.
Yeah, unless it's the primary thing. Arizona's primary hasn't happened either yet.
I guess so.
So, but you're not hearing about these primary challenges really getting teeth.
Yeah.
And in fact, you see Donald Trump not performing well in polls in Arizona against Hillary Clinton. So,
I don't know. And now it's at the point I don't know what to hope for in terms of outcome of these primaries.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I would enjoy very much seeing all of them lose and think that I guess the odds of winning those seats for Democrats might be better if experienced Republicans are replaced by loons. Of course, on the other hand, there's the chance that they'll be replaced in November by those same loons.
Right.
And I don't know what...
Although we've got great Democrats running in both New Hampshire and Arizona, so... Yes. This is a very, very weird year.
Yeah, maybe I just don't place bets or hope too hard for anything. I just say whatever happens, happens. I'll take
I just
want
want Donald Trump to stick around until after Labor Day.
Yeah,
just hang in there for another month, Donald, because it's going to be very hard for anybody replacing you to gear up.
That's true.
In 2 months' time.
I imagine
3 months? August, they could possibly do it. They could forget the whole convention happened. After Labor Day, it'd be much harder. So hang in there, Donald.
He seems to be having a good time.
Don't give up just yet.
So he's not one to walk away from a good time, as far as I know. So I guess he'll stick with it. And we're now seeing more discussion of people actually saying aloud, well, what are the rules if we decide, is there anything we can do, or do we have to wait for Donald Trump to leave? Can the Republican National Committee get together and declare him not the nominee? All sorts of speculation going on. That's an area that I have to admit I am not sure what the rules are when it comes to decide. What if the Republican National Committee, which I guess is still their highest authority, despite the fact that Donald Trump is supposed to own the party at this point, what if they get together and just say, we don't care, you're not it? I don't know if they can pick another person. I assume they can. It's a private organization. I suppose they can do what they like. But nobody knows.
Forcing him out, though, would be really, really difficult.
It would, well, I guess. I mean, certainly forcing him to agree that he's out would be impossible. And I assume it ends in lawsuit of Donald Trump suing the Republican National Committee and judges being asked to somehow decide as between the validity of a vote of the committee versus the results of the primaries, and who knows whether they're going to want to do that or if they can. But it's an amazing thing to have to contemplate, I guess.
It seems more likely to me that he just decides to take his ball and go home than Republicans actually try to force him out. Because right now, what they are planning is, okay, how do we do this without him? How do we make it okay for all of the Republicans who are vulnerable running for re-election to say, well, okay, not him, but me.
Right. I don't know. And so far they've been unwilling to go along with that plan. I guess you have to talk to them again post-primary. But how long do we have to wait for some of these primaries? Do you know when Arizona goes?
Off the top of my head, no, but I can certainly look it up. New Hampshire's in September.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine they're both. I don't know much whether anyone else goes in August.
Is Washington State moved theirs up to last night, which was odd. They used to always be in September.
Yeah, I did see that they had theirs going too, and I think there was a noteworthy Democratic primary win there.
There was also a scary Republican primary win. Washington State is like California. They've done the stupid top two thing.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so now apparently there are going to be two Republicans vying for Secretary of State. No, Treasury, for the treasurer in Washington State. I don't understand.
Do not seek the Treasury.
decisions. Arizona's primary election is August 30th.
Wow. Okay. Seems like a really lousy time to go, but.
Doesn't it? You don't do anything in August.
Very little, and certainly at the end of August, I mean, I guess kids might be back in school, but everybody's thinking Labor Day.
Yeah.
I don't know. So probably a lot of people, well, okay, absentee balloting is a little easier these days. A lot of people probably just, and there's a lot of white people, so there's some early voting left there. So maybe early voting and then take your vacation. And I don't know. Well, we'll see. But, that's been a big story, right? The last couple of days as well. We had extensive discussion of it here, but I wondered if you either...
And just by the way, New Hampshire's is September 13th.
Okay. That seems more normal. It's late, but at least, everybody's back to work.
Back
and
in town, yeah.
All the renters have left, summer rentals in New Hampshire. Okay, so they got the place back to themselves. But that's still, it feels like a long time to wait to find out what's happening with Kellyanne.
It does. It does. It's sort of frustrating.
Yeah. What a disaster it must be. If you hate elections, to live in New Hampshire, we have the first presidential primary, and it stretches all the way to September before you even know who's going to be on the damn ballot. And then you got like 10 weeks.
It would be very frustrating.
I would think. They must really love it.
Unless, we had everything happening in September, which I could live with.
Yeah. Well, that would
short
be
election
seasons.
I'm all for them.
Yeah. Well.
At any rate, I interrupted you. You were going to ask me something that I'm sure was critical.
Not really, but I was fishing around for other topics that might be of interest to you. We spoke extensively about the North Carolina, or the rulings about the North Carolina voter restrictions and the fact that it's happening elsewhere in so many other states, and that all of a sudden the federal courts finding themselves emboldened.
Some state courts, too.
Yes, that's true. It's not only federal courts.
Yeah. The long arm of Antonin Scalia.
Yeah.
Now gone.
Long dead arm. Well, we pried away his control of voter restrictions from his cold dead hands, and terrific. Yeah, that's been a major motivator, I understand, for the courts, is that they don't fear being reversed based on nothing, but reversed in any way when if these things are ever appealed up to a 4-4 court, or eventually a full court. If it's Hillary Clinton doing the appointing, they feel pretty safe.
Yeah.
And I guess if it ends up being Donald Trump doing the appointing, then why not? One last hurrah. and give
Let's try to save
vote.
Democracy if we can.
Right. And
the North Carolina ruling was particularly interesting because it was scathing.
Yeah. Well, they were finally free to say, look, we understand what you're doing.
This is clearly discriminatory. This is clearly about keeping black people from the polls.
Yeah.
No question about it. No doubt in our minds. And you can't do that. So, yeah, that was refreshing. But when you see it happening in Texas as well, state courts in Wisconsin, it's encouraging. These fights are still going to be there. Chris Kobach, even in Kansas, has had some state court losses when they're trying to keep him from keeping everybody but the whitest people out of the polls. It's encouraging. The fight will continue.
Yeah.
Obviously. As long as we have Republican legislatures and governors and secretaries of state, we are going to have this fight. But very encouraging to have the courts on our side.
Yeah, it's hopeful. It's nice to know that they're still teaching in law schools that, generally speaking, you want as many people to be able to exercise the franchise as possible.
Yeah.
Because that's really not a Republican value. They do not want that at all. And it's quite un-American, and I don't think everybody really understands exactly how off base and out of step with American tradition it really is, because they try and disguise it, and try and come up with various excuses for why exactly the people they don't want voting ought to be blocked from the franchise. They just have to come up with different reasons for invalidating their registrations and dressing it up to look like law. And that's the big thing that's come out of the court decisions is the court's now feeling free to say, just because it says whereas at the top doesn't mean it's for real. You can't just say, whereas I hate those people, it's now illegal. Doesn't work like that. There's still a constitution beneath all of this stuff, and it has to be a real reason and bear your solution has to bear some resemblance to an identified and provable problem. It's actually a conservative approach, actually, really. We're just not going to heap laws on the books for nothing. Remember just like 10 seconds ago when you said we shouldn't do that about guns? Yeah, now
but
about people.
Different.
That's the same issue. So, anyway.
No, guns are different.
Yeah, right. Because guns are protected in the Constitution and people aren't.
Right.
I guess that's it. Or corporations, though. Maybe.
Corporations and guns.
Yeah. Maybe they should vote. Well, we'll see.
I'm sure that's next.
Yeah, very likely. So I don't know. I'd say other than that, topics. What's it like to be writing at the front page of Daily Kos in a crazy election season like this?
It's very, very strange. I'll go from a Senate race.
Yeah.
Your standard stuff, your issues. Yesterday we got the big endorsement from the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare for Deborah Ross. Not really in question since our friend Richard Burr doesn't really like old people.
Yeah, well, that's an odd thing too. That stems from the basic fealty to entitlement reform or whatever that might mean.
Right, and getting lots and lots of money from the insurance industry in order to privatize all of these things. He's really, really big on privatizing Medicare.
Yeah.
That's one of his real bugaboos. Okay. So, we've got Deborah Ross running in North Carolina, who's made this a race. Nobody foresaw Richard Burr being in trouble, but he is. So I write about those kinds of things, great endorsements for our Democratic candidates and standard issue campaign kinds of things, and then Donald Trump.
Yeah. I mean, does it make you ever say what? I guess at some point you must say, well, okay, it's real news, and we definitely owe people that, but sometimes, why do I bother? Look what's happening here. The guy says he's going to use nuclear weapons, and I'm worried about who's getting an endorsement like this. But back in the real world, where people actually have to make voting decisions on more than just, well, I hate Donald Trump, so to hell with everything else.
Well, and I think Trump is really sucking all of the oxygen out of this campaign.
Yeah.
So it's really important to try to keep saying, look, down ticket. We've got a big, big opportunity here.
Mm-hmm.
And then here comes Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, still, it's obviously quite important. And you have to say, these people are just as crazy in many ways as Donald Trump. He's much more expert at grabbing the spotlight for himself. But we've had the problem of crazy Republicans who say things without regard for the real world impact of what they say or what they advocate.
Well, yeah, but that's
Louis
Gohmert and Steve King.
Yeah.
Contained within the House.
Right.
It's very different now. One of the things that's been frustrating to me, I saw a whole thing on John McCain on MSNBC talking about, condemning Trump for con and all of this stuff, and then refusing to withdraw his support for Trump. Without any mention at all, the McCain is in a re-election race right now.
Yeah.
So,
which, of course, is the heart of it.
you know, we've got to keep trying to drag the focus back to the fact that these people are also running for re-election, and that we do have Senate races and we do have House races that are pretty critical.
Yeah.
Particularly Senate races.
And some of these Republican leaders who find themselves walking this tightrope are the very people that, I guess, I don't know what you would call nervous Republicans who are still willing to perhaps back Trump, are depending on, well, okay, he's crazy, yes, but he's the only choice we have for president because I'm too afraid to admit that I'm putting, the
party ahead
of country. But, well, he's my only choice. But don't worry, I mean, we have so many experienced, sane, balanced Republicans. They'll keep him in line. They won't allow Trump to do the craziest of the things that he's saying. And it's quite obvious that they, under the right circumstances, will endorse the crazy things. They're doing it right now. The people you think are going to hold him in check are so unsure of themselves that, Trump comes
when
and spits in their faces and he says
crazy things, when he attacks Gold Star families, they don't withdraw their support. What's the message Donald Trump is receiving from that?
You're a winner.
When Donald Trump says he's not going to endorse John McCain or Paul Ryan, and John McCain and Paul Ryan say, oh, okay.
It's okay, we endorse you anyway.
What's the message Donald Trump is taking from that? How in the world do they think they can control him?
I don't know. They may not think they can control him, but certainly their voters, they're pretty sure, oh yeah, well, maybe after the primary or whatever, but they'll be over the same barrel. And I guess that's also reason to think, well, so who will be in control of things in Congress? Remember, it's not been that long since we saw the absolute craziest of the crazy force a speaker out. Mm-hmm. And now they've replaced him with a speaker that was slightly crazier to begin with, but also is now knuckling under for... There's no indication he's going to be able to control the guy, and or that anybody will, but ever more indication that in growing numbers, Congress, the Republican conference in both the House and Senate will be made up in greater numbers of people who actually think Trump is doing the right thing here. And the people who could have stood against him and then blew all their credibility by not withdrawing their endorsements are hoping maybe to be returned to minority within their own party status, but they assume that they'll come back and take the reins because John McCain has always been in charge in the Senate. Paul Ryan, well, okay, for the last 10 minutes, has been in charge in Congress, and he has this big hammer, and he's going to be the guy. Yeah, everybody's going to look at and respect the gavel all of a sudden, even though they just threw somebody out. Of course, on the other hand, the people who threw somebody out just got thrown out too.
Yeah.
So I don't know who to. I'm not sure, but I guess that only reinforces the point. Who in the world is supposed to keep this guy in check? They can't even keep themselves in check in the House. But they're going to, rope a monster like Trump.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to discuss, isn't it?
2016 is really, really weird.
It's a very strange year. Well, I don't know. I'm not even sure what else to say. And I guess we can't even fall back. Normally at this point, I guess in 2012, we would have said, let's talk about some of Romney's crazy policies. Because there were some policies.
Yeah, there were some. There were actually things written down.
Yeah. I with Trump, not the case. Even something as basic as the website, still largely blank.
Yeah.
I actually took the opportunity, since he was in town, for me, to watch the entirety of a Trump rally speech. I saw his convention speech. That was crazy in itself. He spent a good part of the rally speech talking about how his convention speech wasn't dark. by the way. That was interesting. And then he recounted all the things he talked about, each of which was incredibly dark, and then said, see, not dark. But I don't know if you've had a chance to watch one of his rally speeches, but there's literally nothing happening in there. He doesn't.
It's just
propose
words.
a policy. Yeah. And then he goes off on tangents and will tell a personal anecdote and then say that he hates somebody. And then he looks at his notes and says, hey, gonna build a wall. Like literally, just does it that way. And everybody says, yeah, that's right. And guess what? Mexico's gonna pay for it. Hooray! And then trails off into something else, and I don't like this person, and what about that baby?
And crooked Hillary.
Right, yeah. Then he just goes back to that. Believe me.
Believe me.
Yeah, so between that and a few other things, he tested out a couple of expansions on his regular themes in terms of the crookedness of Hillary, etc. But mostly he had his surrogates out there, I guess, saying things like Kaiser Khan is in the Muslim Brotherhood. And
I hadn't heard that one yet.
Oh, yeah, that's one of their new ones. Kaiser is a Muslim Brotherhood plant cooperating with the Clinton administration, and that his business, this one, I think that was Roger Stone with that one, and it was Katrina Pearson, I guess, also floating yesterday. His business is he sells likely fraudulent visas to Muslim immigrants so that we can import terrorists into this country. That's what he does for a living. That's what they're saying. And Trump sort of floats that stuff and says, people are talking, this has been written about. People are saying this.
People are saying, Breitbart is saying it, so you know.
Right. And then it's the job of Corey Lewandowski as CNN analyst. Now CNN is saying it. So he just gets on there and spews that stuff, and now Trump can truthfully say, it's on CNN. I don't know why you're not reporting it. And, then the rest of it is Breitbart talking points and the like. It's been a hell of a week, and and it's getting worse.
It's getting worse. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
It's only going to get worse.
So, and that stuff has been well covered. And by the way, it's been an interesting election cycle for me watching the roster of front page writers who have come to take on a Trump is ridiculous beat, where I think anybody could have seen beforehand, okay, well, Hunter will be handling a lot of that. Mark Sumner has been handling...
It's too much for Hunter.
Yeah.
It's just way too much for Hunter.
No one person can capture the fount of crazy. And Mark's found himself an expanded role, not just in Trump coverage, of course, but I've been surprised and quite happy and delighted to see it, that he's been taking that on as well and doing a really fantastic job with it.
Yeah,
it must
fantastic
be
stuff.
dumbfounding for him to realize he has to do this. This morning I see him about the nuclear threat. Front page.
I think he's enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's therapeutic to be able to vent, but I wonder whether he doesn't feel the stress of it. Oh my God, I just had to write this headline this morning. Donald Trump could go nuclear in seconds, and there's no mechanism to stop him.
Woohoo!
Wow. Yeah, I don't think he thought he was going to have to do that.
No, I don't think he
ever
did.
in life.
But when you're really a political junkie.
Yeah.
There you go.
I guess you write about whatever comes along, and then, but who thought this was going to come along? I just didn't. I mean, once it was clear that it might be Donald Trump, then okay, well now that possibility exists. But I mean, generally speaking, the rest of my life, I didn't think that was going to happen. So, I don't know. I don't even know how you divvy that stuff up anymore.
Well, part of it is who's not on vacation and who's in,
That's true too.
It's just sort of try to contain the crazy as much as you can. We're not even reporting on all of it. I mean, how can you?
The readership would go crazy. I mean, there's definitely a delicate balance between, covering it adequately and then having people say, what is this, Fox? It's all Trump all the time. Well, I know it's negative, but please. Surely. Although I have to tell you, it really, it gets a lot of eyeballs. It does. I mean, well, people can't, there's a reason they bring up the train wreck metaphor.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants to see that. So
absolutely, I
don't know. What are you seeing on the horizon for yourself in the next couple hours to days? If you can, I know we were just in preparation for having you come on. You were sending me the note. Yeah, how can you avoid Trump? You really can't.
You can't. And in fact, I'm following up on his sexual harassment, and I'm sorry, Greg, it's harassment.
It's a divisive problem. Harassment and harassment.
Following up on those statements, what drove Meg Whitman, I think, possibly to say, all right, sorry, Trump.
And that's just
I'm a Republican, but you are not representing women here, any of us. And Tammy Duckworth, who had a lot to say about
God, we didn't even touch that
Donald Trump and the Purple Heart.
That was astounding. Even I note for the record, what's the guy's name who was briefly engaged to Bristol Palin?
Oh yeah,
who's a Medal of Honor winner? Who I shouldn't be yada-yadaing the name of a Medal of Honor winner, but I do. He came out and said that he's got to apologize to these people, and he's getting the same crap in email. You're a traitor. Go back to where I don't know where.
Well, that's because Hillary Clinton retweeted Sarah Palin's retweet of his tweet.
I wonder. I was going to say, I wonder what Sarah Palin thinks about this, and then I said, I wonder what Sarah Palin. I got hung up on it. Couldn't do it. I wonder though whether it dawns on anybody, like it must occasionally occur to some of these people. I really thought I was untouchable in this country. I'm a Medal of Honor, and Sarah Palin's possible son-in-law. I don't even know where that stands.
I have no idea.
Who cares? But he must have thought he was invincible. And you want to see something amazing? Is it that how quickly Donald Trump people can turn on you because they're bonkers? I hope that opens some eyes somewhere, but I don't know.
I hope so. But I'm not going to count on it at all.
But you were saying about the sexual harassment issue. This would be the Ivanka would never let it happen to her statement?
The Ivanka would never let it happen to her, and that was Eric Trump's statement. Donald Trump's statement was, well, she'll just have to change jobs.
Yeah. I guess his clarification was...
Not just change jobs, change careers.
Yes. You should just do that. Everybody can do that.
Yeah.
And you just change, Donald Trump is here to harass me, I guess. Because that's a wide-ranging issue, sexual harassment for Donald Trump, because we haven't even gotten to the stage of the campaign where people begin talking about how often that's alleged inside his companies, much less the very shadowy, strange allegations that he himself was involved with some sort of sexual assault cases. Who wants to touch that one with a 10-foot pole? I don't know, but apparently... Look, people are saying it. It's being reported. So, I don't know.
But he's surprised people are talking about his comments on Fox News and sexual harassment.
Almost got you there. It surprises him?
I'm surprised people are talking about that. He tells Phil Rucker... Washington Post's Philip Rucker. I'm surprised people are talking about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised people I'm surprised that he's surprised, I guess. But again, I guess that's the sort of the pattern.
I'm just reading the transcript of this. And Rucker says, they are talking about it. You think she should leave and go find another. Trump says you can do it either way. Rucker says, would you want her to follow the path that Gretchen Carlson did? Trump says, I'd want her to do what makes her happy. I'd want her to do, Phil, what makes her happy. Trump looks at a nearby television, which was tuned to Fox News. Oh, did they have another one of these things go down? It's terrible, that crash. Never liked that plane structurally. Never thought that plane could.
What?
And then Rucker's trying to get him back. Why should she have to change careers or jobs? She doesn't have to. She can do it either way. Some people would rather change and some people don't. Some people don't want to be forced to stay in a certain atmosphere. You can do both.
Okay, not an answer, but...
Oh my goodness. But I loved the plane destruction. Here's a shiny object, Donald.
Yeah, really, literally. An actual
literally.
Wow. Well, he's got no attention span. The comments, of course, were ridiculous. The Ivanka thing is ridiculous. I mean, he will never recognize it as an issue or a problem because, I mean, he's sexually harassing Ivanka already. I've seen it.
You just cannot unsee that, can you?
No.
Ugh.
So, look, he doesn't understand what the concept is, so there's no chance that he'll have any good advice for anybody stuck in that position. But naturally, his answer is, I want her to do whatever she wants to do, and okay, but not everybody can do that. Yeah, but I can. That's the point. Ooh, look, I don't know, what was he looking at? A plane. Okay. Well, I don't know. I guess at this point, there's no point in planning the day's news coverage of him. We just have to wait and see.
Yes.
And I guess it's time for us all to go and wait and see and figure out what he's going to do. I appreciate your coming by and discussing the fact that nobody knows what the hell's going to happen minute to minute.
You are most welcome.
But boy, all right, well, we'll catch up with you again next week and make it through the dead spot of August by...
Hardly dead this time around.
This is the hardest working dead spot you've ever had, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out. We always love to hear from you. I hope you had a good vacation. And don't take any more.
Okay.
We miss you when you're gone. Thanks, Joan.
Bye-bye.
We'll talk to you again next week. Joan McCarter, senior political writer at Daily Co, is off to do just that. No one knows exactly how she'll have to come at it. And that's what makes the job exciting. What about what comes up next on Netroots Radio? We know that, but it's still exciting. What's coming up on the after show next? U.S. immigration agents don't follow the law when it comes to asylum seekers. With flyers urging residents to bring the kids, neo-Nazis are planning a picnic to make a Pennsylvania county a white supremacist hotbed again. Not content with just Idaho counties, I guess. And just released FBI documents reveal the agency monitored Holocaust survivor and intrepid human rights activist Hetty Epstein. How about that? They're always monitoring the right people now. What about the last half? A special visit with Chris Reeves for a report on last night's Kansas primary. And maybe we'll gloat a little bit over the routing of the T-Birchers there.
From Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
That is some show lined up, and what about that? A twofer with Chris Reeves this week. You couldn't ask for more. Both there at the Democratic National Convention and on the ground in Kansas to discuss the demise of the Republicans. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act, Daily Coast community calendar, and more on the after show with Wink and Justice next.